Marcus Chun stared at the message on his screen. He read it 3 times before the words finally made sense. After 11 years of service, 11 years of perfect performance reviews, 11 years of calling Deep Space Station Omega-7 his home, he was being fired. Report to Commander Veltar's office immediately, the message said. Nothing more. Marcus stood up from his workstation and looked around the communications bay. The familiar hum of machines filled the air. Banks of monitors showed data streams from across the galaxy. This room had been his world for over a decade. He knew every wire, every circuit, every strange sound the equipment made when it needed maintenance. The other workers in the bay pretended not to notice him leaving. Zara, a blue-skinned Andorian, kept her eyes on her screen. Corv, a massive lizard-like saurian, suddenly became very interested in his coffee. They knew what the summons meant. Everyone knew. The walk to Commander Veltar's office felt longer than usual. Marcus passed through corridors he had walked thousands of times. He nodded to other crew members, but they looked away quickly. Bad news traveled fast on a space station. Commander Veltar sat behind his large metal desk. He was a Centauri, tall and thin with gray skin and forearms. His people were known for being smart and proud. Too proud, Marcus thought. Veltar didn't look up when Marcus entered. Sit, Veltar said. Still reading something on his tablet, Marcus sat in the uncomfortable chair across from the desk. He waited. Veltar liked to make people wait. It made him feel important. Finally, Veltar looked up. His black eyes showed no emotion. Marcus Chun, 11 years of service. Communications specialist and cryptographer. He said it like he was reading from a file. Your employment is terminated. Effective immediately. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Sir, may I ask why? My performance reviews have always been excellent. Last month, I decoded 3 new alien transmissions that led to successful first contact protocols. The month before that, your services are no longer needed, Veltar interrupted. We are upgrading. The new Nexus 7 artificial intelligence system will handle all communications duties. It is faster, more accurate, and more reliable than any organic being. But sir, there are things that AI can't do. Pattern recognition and chaotic signals requires intuition. Human intuition. I've found patterns that computers missed. I've prevented conflicts by reading between the lines of diplomatic messages. Veltar held up one of his 4 hands. Enough. I have made my decision. The Nexus 7 system has backing from Sector Command. It represents the future. You represent the past. Marcus felt anger building in his chest. What about the Kepler incident? When the trading station went silent, NEXU's prototype couldn't understand the distress pattern. I decoded it in 2 hours. Saved 300 lives. Lucky guess, Veltar said with a wave of his hand. The new system has been improved. It will not make such oversights. It wasn't a lucky guess, Marcus said, his voice getting louder. It was experience. Pattern recognition. The ability to think outside the box. These are human strengths that human limitations, Veltar corrected. Your species thinks in chaotic, unpredictable ways. This causes errors. The Nexus 7 thinks logically. It processes data without emotion or bias. It is superior. Marcus stood up. Superior? Commander, I've worked with AI systems for years. They're tools. Useful tools, but they can't replace human judgment. They can't make leaps of logic or see patterns that don't fit standard models. Veltar finally stood as well. Even sitting, he was tall. Standing, he towered over Marcus. Your opinion is noted and dismissed. Pack your belongings. A transport ship will arrive tomorrow to take you back to human space. Perhaps you can find work more suited to your species' limited capabilities. The insult hit harder than a physical blow. Marcus had given 11 years of his life to this station. He had made friends here. He had solved problems that others couldn't solve. He had kept communications running during 3 different crisis situations. And now he was being dismissed like a broken piece of equipment. What about the others? Marcus asked. Zara, Corv, the rest of the communications team? They will remain to assist Nexus-7 during the transition period, Veltar said. Once the system is fully operational, we will evaluate their usefulness. Marcus understood. Soon, all the organic crew members would be gone. Veltar wanted an all-AI operation. It would look good on his record. Modern, efficient. The fact that it might not work didn't matter to him. I see, Marcus said quietly. May I have a moment to gather my personal items? You have 1 hour, Veltar said, already looking back at his tablet. Security will escort you to ensure you take only personal belongings. Marcus walked back to the communications bay in a daze. A security robot floated nearby, watching his every move. The other workers still avoided looking at him. He understood. They were scared for their own jobs. Marcus opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small box. Inside were personal items collected over 11 years. A photo of Earth, a lucky coin his grandfather had given him, a small crystal that Zara had brought back from her home planet, some data chips containing his personal algorithms for pattern recognition. He also took his notebook. It was old-fashioned, made of real paper. Most people used electronic tablets, but Marcus liked writing by hand. The notebook contained years of observations about signal patterns, notes about alien communication methods, and ideas for new decoding techniques. That's primitive technology, the security robot buzzed. Why do you keep it? Marcus looked at the notebook. Because sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways. The robot didn't understand. How could it? It was programmed to think that newer always meant better. Marcus packed his few belongings into a small bag. Around him, the Nexus-7 system was already being installed. New processors, new displays, new everything. It looked impressive. Very modern. Very expensive. As he prepared to leave, Marcus noticed something on one of the monitors. Strange signals were coming from the outer rim. Faint patterns that didn't match any known sources. His fingers moved toward the controls automatically, but then he stopped. Not his job anymore. He picked up his bag and walked toward the door. Tomorrow he would be on a transport ship, heading back to human space. After 11 years, he was going home. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like failure. At the door, he turned for one last look at the communications bay. NEX-US-7 central processor hummed quietly in the corner. Efficient, logical, superior, according to Veltar. Marcus hoped the commander was right. For everyone's sake, he hoped the AI could handle whatever came next. Because something was coming. He could feel it in his bones. And feelings, intuition, and human instincts were exactly the things that Nexus-7 couldn't understand. Marcus sat on a metal bench in the station's docking bay, waiting for the transport ship. His small bag rested beside him. Around him, the usual activity of a busy space station continued. Cargo loaders moved supplies. Maintenance crews fixed equipment. Nobody paid attention to one dismissed human. 20-4 hours had passed since Veltar fired him. 24 hours to say goodbye to 11 years of his life. It wasn't enough time. Marcus thought about his first day on Station Omega-7. He had been young then, fresh from the academy. Everything seemed huge and exciting. The station was a marvel of engineering, floating in space at the edge of known territory. Its job was to monitor deep space communications and watch for signs of new civilizations. Back then, Marcus was just another communications technician. But he had something special. He could see patterns in chaos. Other people looked at random signals and saw noise. Marcus looked at the same signals and saw hidden messages. His first big success came during year 2. A distant star system had gone quiet. All communication had stopped. The AI system said it was probably equipment failure. The other technicians agreed. But Marcus noticed something in the last transmission. A tiny irregularity in the signal pattern. It was so small that the computers missed it. Marcus spent 3 days analyzing that irregularity. He found it was actually a coded message. The colony was under attack by space pirates. They couldn't send normal distress calls, so they hid the message in routine communications. Marcus's discovery led to a rescue mission that saved 8,000 colonists. After that, people started paying attention to the human, who could read signals like books. Marcus remembered the Kepler trading station incident from last year. The station had stopped all communications suddenly. Standard procedure said to wait 72 hours before investigating. But Marcus studied the signal patterns from the hours before the silence. He noticed the communications were getting shorter and more urgent. Not equipment failure. Something was wrong. He convinced the sector patrol to investigate immediately. They found the station's life support system had failed. The crew was dying slowly. Another day and everyone would have been dead. 300 lives saved because Marcus could read fear in a radio signal. These memories felt bitter now. All those years of service, all those lives saved, and Veltar had dismissed him like he was nothing. Marcus looked up at the observation window. Through the transparent aluminum, he could see the communications bay where Nexus 7 was now working. The AI had been fully activated 6 hours ago. Veltar had sent out a message to all sector commands, bragging about his modernization of the station. The AI was impressive, Marcus had to admit. It processed signals faster than any human. It could translate between dozens of alien languages instantly. It never got tired or made calculation errors. On paper, it was perfect. But Marcus knew something that Veltar didn't understand. Communication wasn't just about processing data. It was about understanding context, reading between the lines, seeing what wasn't being said as much as what was being said. Could Nexus 7 tell when a diplomat was lying? Could it detect fear in a distress call? Could it recognize when someone was trying to hide something important? These were human skills. They came from experience, intuition, and emotion. All things that I didn't have. Marcus pulled out his old notebook and flipped through the pages. Years of observations about different alien species and their communication patterns. The Zentari always spoke in formal language when they were nervous. The Andorians used more technical terms when they were trying to hide something. The Saurians made their sentences longer when they were angry. These were small details. Tiny patterns that took years to notice and understand. Marcus doubted that Nexus 7 had been programmed with this kind of subtle knowledge. A low rumble filled the docking bay. Marcus looked up to see his transport ship approaching. The vessel was a standard civilian freighter, nothing fancy. It would take him back to human space in 5 days. As he watched the ship dock, Marcus felt his personal communicator buzz. The device was old and simple, something he used to stay in touch with friends and family. He looked at the screen and frowned. There was a signal, very faint, coming from the direction of the void sector. That area of space was supposed to be empty. No planets, no stations, no regular traffic. Just empty space between the galaxies. Marcus adjusted the communicator's antenna and tried to clean up the signal. It was definitely artificial, not natural space noise. But it was strange. The pattern didn't match any known civilization or technology. He looked around the docking bay. Should he report this to station security? But they would just hand it over to Nexus 7. And if Marcus was wrong, it would just prove Veltar's point about human unreliability. Marcus studied the signal more carefully. There was a mathematical pattern in the transmission. Numbers, but not random numbers. They were following a sequence. A countdown. His blood went cold. A countdown meant something was going to happen. And countdowns from empty space were never good news. The transport ship finished docking. Passengers began walking down the ramp. Some were humans heading home like Marcus. Others were aliens traveling to different parts of the galaxy. Normal people living normal lives. They had no idea that something might be counting down to their destruction. Marcus tried to contact the station's communications bay directly. His access codes had been deleted, of course. He tried calling Zara, but she didn't answer. Probably too scared to talk to a fired employee. Finally, he sent a message to Commander Veltar. He explained about the signal from the void sector. He included his analysis and his concerns about the countdown pattern. The reply came back in less than 5 minutes. Your employment has been terminated. Do not contact this station again with your wild theories. NEX US-7 has already analyzed all signals from that sector and found nothing of concern. Marcus stared at the message. NEX US-7 had analyzed the signals and found nothing? That was impossible. Unless the AI was looking for standard signal patterns. Unless it was programmed to recognize known technologies and known threats. If something new was out there, something that didn't fit the standard models, NEX US-7 might miss it completely. Marcus stood up and looked back at the station one more time. Through the observation window, he could see the communications bay. NEX US-7's displays showed green lights across the board. All systems normal. No threats detected. But Marcus's personal communicator was still picking up that faint countdown signal. And it was getting stronger. A voice from the transport ship called out, "All passengers aboard. Departure in 10 minutes." Marcus picked up his bag and walked toward the ship. There was nothing more he could do. He had tried to warn them. If Veltar wanted to trust his precious AI over human intuition, that was his choice. As Marcus climbed the ramp into the transport ship. He took one last look at Station Omega-7. It had been his home for 11 years. Now it felt like a tomb. The countdown signal was definitely getting stronger. 36 hours after Marcus left Station Omega-7, the signals from the void sector became impossible to ignore. But Nexus 7 was still ignoring them. Commander Veltar stood in the communications bay, watching the AI system work. Banks of monitors showed data from across the galaxy. Everything looked peaceful and organized. The AI processed each signal with perfect efficiency, translating alien languages and filing reports with mechanical precision. Nexus 7, Veltar said. Show me the analysis of signals from Sector 7 Alpha 9. A smooth artificial voice responded immediately. Sector 7 Alpha 9 shows normal background radiation. Some irregular pulsar activity detected. Classification: natural phenomena. Threat level: 0. Veltar nodded with satisfaction. Excellent. Continue monitoring. The AI had been working perfectly for over a day. No errors, no miscommunications, no human-style emotional interpretations of data. Everything was logical and efficient. Veltar felt proud of his decision to modernize the station. Across the room, Zara worked at her station. The blue-skinned Andorian had been Marcus's closest friend on the station. She kept glancing at the monitors showing the void sector data. Something was bothering her, but she didn't know what. Nexus 7, she said quietly. Can you show me the raw signal data from the void sector? Displaying raw data, the AI responded. Zara studied the patterns on her screen. To her eyes, it looked like random noise. But she remembered how Marcus used to stare at similar patterns for hours. He always said the chaos had its own kind of order, if you knew how to look for it. She missed Marcus. The communications bay felt different without him. Colder, more mechanical. Meanwhile, on the civilian transport ship Starrunner, Marcus sat in his small passenger cabin. His personal communicator was on the desk, still picking up those strange signals. For the past 12 hours, he'd been studying them obsessively. The patterns were becoming clearer. The mathematical sequence was definitely a countdown. Marcus had calculated that it would reach 0 in about 17 hours. But countdown to what? He had also noticed something else. The signals weren't coming from one source. There were at least 12 different transmission points, all sending the same countdown. They were arranged in a perfect geometric pattern around the void sector. Marcus pulled out his notebook and started drawing diagrams. 12 points. Equal distances. Perfect formation. This wasn't natural. It wasn't random. Someone or something was out there, and they were coordinating a massive operation. The more he studied the signals, the more worried he became. The technology was unlike anything he had seen before. It didn't match human, Centauri, Andorian, Saurian, or any other known civilization's communication methods. The mathematical principles were advanced, almost alien in their complexity. Marcus tried calling Station Omega-7 again. This time, he didn't even get through to Veltar. A communications officer told him that terminated. Employees were not allowed to contact the station for any reason. Frustrated, Marcus sent an encrypted message to his old friend Dr. Sarah Torres, who worked at Fleet Command headquarters. Sarah was one of the few people who understood Marcus's unique abilities. She had supported his work when others called his methods unscientific. In his message, Marcus explained everything. The countdown signals, the geometric formation, his concerns about Nexus 7's limitations. He attached all his analysis and begged Sarah to investigate. Back on Station Omega-7, the situation was getting worse, but nobody realized it. NEX-US-7 continued to classify the signals as natural phenomena. The AI's programming looked for known patterns and known technologies. When it found something that didn't fit the standard models, it simply ignored it. This was exactly what Marcus had feared would happen. Veltar was in his office, writing a report about the station's successful modernization. He planned to send it to Sector Command with recommendations for other stations to follow his example. He was sure this would help his career. A soft chime indicated an incoming message. Veltar opened it and frowned. It was from some human at Fleet Command, asking about unusual signals from the void sector. The message mentioned Marcus Chun by name and requested detailed analysis of recent communications. Veltar deleted the message without responding. Marcus was clearly spreading his wild theories to anyone who would listen. Veltar wouldn't waste time on the paranoid fantasies of a dismissed employee. On the Starrunner, Marcus was becoming more desperate. The countdown was accelerating. What had been a steady pattern was now speeding up. As if something was approaching a critical point, Marcus studied his star charts. The void sector was positioned between the known galaxy and the unexplored regions beyond. If something was coming from that direction, it would have a clear path to all the inhabited systems. He calculated distances and travel times. If a hostile force was coming from the void sector, they could reach the outer colonies in less than 20 hours. They could reach the core systems within a week. Marcus tried one more. Time to contact Station Omega-7. This time he used an emergency channel that was supposed to be monitored at all times. Station Omega-7. This is Marcus Chun. I am detecting hostile signals from the void sector. You are in immediate danger. Please respond. The reply came quickly. Mr. Chen, you are no longer authorized to use emergency channels. Your contact privileges have been revoked. Do not contact this station again. Marcus stared at the communicator in disbelief. They wouldn't even listen to him. Even when he used the word hostile, they dismissed him. On Station Omega 7, NEX US-7 detected the unauthorized use of emergency channels. The AI immediately traced the signal back to the Star Runner and identified Marcus as the sender. Commander Veltar, the AI announced. The terminated employee Marcus Chun has been using emergency frequencies to send false alarm messages. Recommend blocking all communications from his current location. Veltar smiled coldly. Do it. Block all communications from that ship. If Marcus Chen wants to spread panic, he can do it somewhere else. With a few electronic commands. NEX US-7, cut off all communication between the Star Runner and Station Omega 7. Marcus was now completely isolated. Watching a countdown to disaster that only he could see. The countdown showed 16 hours remaining. In the void sector. Something vast and ancient stirred. 12 massive shapes, each one larger than a space station, moved through the darkness between stars. They had been waiting for millennia, dormant in the cold emptiness. Now they were awakening. The countdown had begun long ago, when their sensors detected the expansion of organic civilization into this region of space. The young races had grown too numerous, too confident. It was time for harvesting. The devourers were coming, but the organic races didn't know this. Their artificial intelligence couldn't recognize the threat. Only one human, dismissed as obsolete and unreliable, understood what was approaching. Marcus Chun sat in his tiny cabin, watching the countdown tick toward zero, knowing that millions of lives hung in the balance, and knowing that nobody would listen to him in time. The signals from the void sector grew stronger. Soon, they would be impossible to ignore. But by then, it might be too late. Marcus was staring at his communicator when it suddenly burst to life with an incoming signal. But this wasn't the strange countdown from the void sector. This was something else entirely. Marcus Chun, respond immediately. Priority Alpha clearance. This is Admiral Torres. Fleet Command. Marcus nearly dropped the device. Admiral Torres? His friend Sarah had been promoted? And Priority Alpha clearance meant this was a matter of galactic security. Admiral Torres, this is Marcus Chen responding. The screen flickered and showed the face of his old friend. Sarah Torres looked older now, with gray streaks in her dark hair and worry lines around her eyes. She wore the uniform of a fleet admiral, which meant she was one of the most powerful military officers in human space. Marcus, thank God I found you, Sarah said. We need to talk. Activate Quantum Encryption Protocol 7. Marcus's fingers moved across the controls. Quantum encryption was used for the most sensitive military communications. Whatever Sarah wanted to discuss, it was serious. Encryption active, Marcus said. Sarah, what's going on? We've been monitoring unusual signals from the void sector, Sarah said. Our deep space sensors picked them up 18 hours ago. At first, we thought they were natural phenomena. But then I got your message. Marcus felt relief wash over him. Finally, someone was taking this seriously. I've been analyzing those signals for 2 days, Marcus said. They're not natural. They're artificial, and they're counting down to something. I calculate about 14 hours remaining. Sarah's expression grew darker. Our analysis suggests the same timeline. But Marcus, this is bigger than you think. We've identified the source of those signals. What do you mean? The signals match a pattern from our historical archives. Very old archives. From the first wave of galactic exploration over 1,000 years ago. Marcus frowned. 1,000 years ago? That's before humans left Earth. Before we had any contact with alien civilizations. Exactly, Sarah said. These signals were recorded by the first Centauri exploration ships. They found evidence of an ancient civilization in the void sector, something called the Devourers. The name sent a chill down Marcus's spine. Devourers? Machine intelligences, ancient beyond imagination. They appeared during the early days of galactic civilization and systematically destroyed entire star systems. The survivors called them Devourers because they consumed everything: planets, ships, entire civilizations. Sarah paused and looked at something off-screen. According to the records, the Devourers went dormant about 800 years ago. Everyone assumed they had shut down permanently. But now they're waking up, Marcus finished. It appears so. And Marcus, we have a problem. Our standard military AI systems can't understand Devourer technology. Their attack patterns are too advanced, too adaptive. Every time our predecessors tried to fight them using conventional tactics, the Devourers learned and countered instantly. Marcus began to understand why Sarah was calling him. But humans weren't around during those wars. We don't think like the other species. Exactly. According to the historical records, the only successful resistance against the Devourers came from species that used unpredictable, chaotic tactics. Species that could think outside established patterns. Species like humans. Species like humans, Sarah confirmed. Marcus, I'm officially reactivating your military commission. Field promotion to Fleet Cryptographic Specialist with full tactical authority. Marcus stared at the screen. Sarah, I was just fired from my job. Valtar said I was obsolete. Valtar is a fool, Sarah said flatly. And he may have doomed his entire sector. Our intelligence indicates that Station Omega-7 is directly in the path of the Devourer advance. They'll hit it first. The station is protected by Nexus 7 now, Marcus said. Valtar thinks the AI is superior to human judgment. Sarah's expression became grim. Marcus, NEX US-7 is based on Centauri logic systems. The same type of logic that failed against the Devourers 800 years ago. If the station relies on that AI for defense, everyone there will die. Marcus felt sick. Zara was still on that station. Corv and dozens of other friends and colleagues. Even Veltar, arrogant as he was, didn't deserve to die. What do you want me to do? Marcus asked. We're dispatching a fleet task force to your location immediately, Sarah said. The ship you're on will rendezvous with us in 6 hours. From there, we'll proceed to Station Omega-7. Will we be in time? That depends on how fast the Devourers move once they begin their attack, Sarah said. But Marcus, I need you to understand something. This isn't just about saving one space station. If the Devourers are truly awakening, they'll eventually target all inhabited systems. This could be the beginning of a war for the survival of galactic civilization. The weight of responsibility settled on Marcus's shoulders. What makes you think I can help? I'm just one person. You're not just one person, Sarah said firmly. You're a human who can see patterns in chaos. You can think in ways that AI cannot predict. During the first Devour Wars, that kind of thinking was the only thing that worked. Sarah looked at her watch. I have to go. The task force is already moving. Captain Rivera will contact you with detailed instructions when we rendezvous. Sarah, wait, Marcus said. What about Station Omega-7? Can we warn them? We've tried, Sarah said sadly. Commander Veltar refuses to accept our communications. He claims we're spreading panic based on the fantasies of a dismissed employee. Marcus's anger flared. So he's going to let Pride get everyone killed? It looks that way, Sarah said. Unless we can get there in time to override his authority. The communication ended, leaving Marcus alone with his thoughts. He looked at his personal communicator, still showing the countdown signal from the void sector. 11 hours and 37 minutes remaining, Marcus spent the next few hours studying everything he could find about the ancient Devourer Wars. The historical records were fragmentary, but a pattern emerged. The Devourers were machines, but they thought like living beings. They learned, adapted, and evolved their tactics during battle. Traditional military strategy was useless against them because they could predict and counter any logical approach. Only chaos worked. Only unpredictability. Only the kind of thinking that couldn't be programmed into a computer. 6 hours later, the Star Runner was intercepted by a fleet destroyer called the Valiant. Marcus transferred to the military ship and met Captain Rivera, a stern woman with cybernetic implants that enhanced her reaction time. "Mr. Chun," Captain Rivera said, "Admiral Torres has given me strict orders. You are now the senior tactical advisor for this mission. What are your recommendations?" Marcus looked at the ship's tactical displays. The fleet task force consisted of 12 vessels, destroyers, cruisers, and 1 battleship. Impressive firepower by normal standards. But against the Devourers, it might not be enough. "First," Marcus said, "we need to assume that everything we know about space combat is wrong. The Devourers will learn from our tactics instantly. We need to be random, chaotic, unpredictable. That goes against all military doctrine," Captain Rivera said. "Military doctrine will get us killed," Marcus replied. "The Devourers have been studying organic tactics for thousands of years. They know how we think. Our only advantage is that they've never encountered humans before." Marcus pointed to the countdown display. "We have 9 hours before they reach full activation. 9 hours to save Station Omega-7 and figure out how to fight something that's smarter than our smartest AI." Captain Rivera nodded grimly. "Then we'd better hurry." The fleet task force changed course towards Station Omega-7, racing against time and an enemy that had destroyed civilizations when humanity was still using stone tools. Marcus stared out at the stars and wondered if human unpredictability would be enough to save them all. The fleet task force arrived at Station Omega-7 with just 2 hours remaining on the countdown. Marcus stood on the bridge of the battleship Defiance, watching the space station grow larger on the main screen. It looked peaceful and normal, with no sign of the approaching danger. "Still no response from Commander Veltar," Captain Rivera reported. "He's refusing all communications from the fleet." Marcus shook his head in frustration. "He's going to let his pride kill everyone on that station." Admiral Torres appeared on the communication screen from her ship, the destroyer Vigilant. "Marcus, I'm overriding Veltar's authority under emergency war powers. You're now in command of all defensive operations." "Understood," Marcus said. "But first, we need to evacuate the station's civilian population." "Negative," Torres replied. "No time. The Devourers will arrive in 97 minutes. We need every minute to prepare our defenses." Marcus felt sick, but he understood. There were 3,000 people on Station Omega-7, including families and children. The fleet ships could only carry a few hundred in an emergency evacuation. Most would have to stay and fight. "Transfer me to the station," Marcus ordered. "I need to take control of the communication systems." 20 minutes later, Marcus stood in the familiar communications bay of Station Omega-7. But everything was different now. NEX US-7 hummed in the corner, still reporting that all signals from the void sector were natural phenomena. Zara and Corv looked up in surprise as Marcus entered with armed fleet security officers. "Marcus?" Zara said in confusion. "What are you doing here?" "Saving your lives," Marcus replied. He walked over to his old workstation and began entering commands. "Zara, I need you to help me override Nexus 7's communication protocols." "I can't do that," Zara said nervously. "Commander Veltar ordered us not to." "Commander Veltar has been relieved of duty," interrupted one of the fleet officers. This station is now under martial law. As if summoned by his name, Veltar stormed into the communications bay with 2 security guards. What is the meaning of this? This is my station. Marcus didn't look up from his controls. Not anymore. Admiral Torres has assumed command under emergency war powers. We're about to be attacked by an enemy force that will destroy this station unless we act immediately. Ridiculous. Veltar snapped. Nexus 7 shows no hostile forces in this sector. Your human paranoia. He was interrupted by an alarm. Every screen in the communications bay suddenly lit up with warning signals. The countdown from the void sector had reached 0. Contact! Zara shouted from her station. Multiple large objects emerging from hyperspace. On the main display, space itself seemed to tear open. 12 massive shapes emerged from the dimensional rift, each one the size of a small moon. They were perfectly geometric, dark pyramids covered in strange symbols that hurt to look at directly. Devour ships, Marcus said quietly, just like in the historical records. Veltar stared at the display in shock. That's impossible. NEXUS-7 said. Nexus 7 was programmed to look for known threats. Marcus said, finally turning to face the Centauri commander. The Devourers are older than your civilization. They use technology that your AI can't understand. The fleet task force moved into defensive positions around the station. On the tactical display, Marcus watched 12 human ships face 12 ancient enemies. The odds didn't look good. Devourers are transmitting, Zara reported. Nexus 7 is attempting translation. The AS voice filled the room. Translation complete. Message reads, Organic life forms detected. Harvesting will commence. Resistance is futile. How original, Marcus muttered. He opened a channel to the fleet command ship. Admiral Torres, the Devourers are moving into attack formation. Recommend implementing Chaos Protocol Omega. Chaos Protocol? Veltar demanded. What kind of military strategy is that? The only kind that works against enemies who can predict logical tactics, Marcus replied. He turned to Zara and Corv. I need you to help me coordinate the fleet's movements. We're going to do something that no military academy teaches. What's that? Corv asked. We're going to fight like humans. The battle began when the Devourer ships launched the first attack. Beams of energy unlike anything in current technology reached out toward the fleet ships. The Stalwart, a heavy cruiser, tried to dodge using standard evasive maneuvers. The beam followed its movement perfectly and struck the ship dead center. The cruiser exploded in a ball of flame. They predicted our movement pattern. Captain Rivara reported from the Valiant. Standard tactics are useless. Begin Chaos Protocol, Marcus ordered. All ships, abandon formation. Move at random. No patterns, no logic, no coordination. That's madness. Veltar protested. Military formations exist for good reasons. Military formations will get us killed, Marcus replied. He opened channels to all fleet captains. Listen carefully. I want each ship to move like you're drunk. Change direction for no reason. Speed up and slow down randomly. Fire your weapons at targets you can't possibly hit. Make no sense at all. Admiral Torres's voice came through the speakers. All ships, you heard the man. Embrace chaos. Fight like humans. What happened next looked like the most disorganized battle in military history. Fleet ships zigzagged through space like confused insects. They fired at empty space, then suddenly turned and attacked from unexpected angles. Some ships flew straight at the Devourer vessels, then veered away at the last second for no apparent reason. The Devourers tried to predict these movements, but couldn't. Their ancient computers had never encountered such chaotic tactics. For the first time in thousands of years, they were confused. Marcus watched the tactical display and felt something he hadn't experienced since childhood, the joy of playing a game with no rules. Corv, tell the Defiance to fly upside down for 30 seconds, then spin in a circle. That makes no tactical sense, Corv protested. Exactly. That's why it will work. The battleship Defiance rolled over and began spinning like a child's toy. A Devourer beam that should have destroyed the ship missed completely, passing through the space where logic said the ship should have been. But the Devourers were learning. Marcus could see them adapting their tactics, trying to find patterns in the chaos. Soon they would figure out human unpredictability. We need to end this quickly, Marcus said. He studied the enemy formation and noticed something. The 12 Devourer ships were still maintaining their perfect geometric pattern. They couldn't break their programming completely. That's their weakness, Marcus realized. They're machines. Even when they try to be random, they follow patterns. He opened the channel to Admiral Torres. Admiral, I need all ships to converge on the center of the Devourer formation. Full speed, no coordination, completely random approach vectors. That's suicide, Torres replied. We'll be flying directly into their combined firepower. Trust me, Marcus said. And remember, don't think. Just react. The fleet ships abandoned all pretense of tactics and charged toward the center of the Devourer formation. It looked like a desperate final attack by defeated forces. The Devourers concentrated their fire on the approaching ships. The destroyer Swift was destroyed. The cruiser Guardian lost its engines. But the remaining ships kept coming, weaving through the enemy fire like leaves in a hurricane. Marcus watched the tactical display and waited. He could feel the right moment approaching, the way he used to feel patterns in chaotic signals. Not with his mind, but with his intuition. His human intuition now! Marcus shouted. All ships, emergency stop and fire everything. The fleet ships suddenly reversed engines and came to a complete halt directly in the center of the Devourer formation. Every weapon fired at once, not at the enemy ships, but at the space between them. The concentrated firepower created a massive energy feedback loop. The geometric precision of the Devourer formation, their greatest strength, became their weakness. The energy cascade ripped through their formation like a chain reaction. One by one, the ancient ships began to shut down. Their perfect order had been disrupted by perfect chaos. The remaining Devourers transmitted a final message. Error. Does not compute. Withdrawing to analyze new tactical parameters, the surviving enemy ships disappeared back into hyperspace, retreating to the depths of space where they had slumbered for centuries. Marcus slumped in his chair, exhausted. Around him, the communications bay was silent except for the hum of machinery and quiet celebration from the fleet ship's dock commander. Veltar stared at the displays showing the enemy retreat. How did you know that would work? Marcus looked at his old boss and smiled tiredly. I didn't know. I just felt it was right. That's what makes humans different from machines. We can act on instinct, on feeling, on pure intuition. We can be illogical. Nexus 7 could never have done that, Zara said quietly. No, Marcus agreed. The AI thinks logically. It follows patterns. But sometimes the best solution is the one that makes no sense at all. Admiral Torres appeared on the communication screen, smiling broadly. Outstanding work, Marcus. The Devourers are retreating beyond sensor range. They'll probably go dormant again for a few centuries while they try to figure out what happened. Marcus nodded. And by the time they wake up, hopefully we'll have taught other species to think like humans. Commander Veltar approached Marcus's workstation slowly. The proud Zentari looked older, humbled by the day's events. Marcus-chan, he said formally.